Okay, everyone, we'll get started here pretty quick. So, if everybody can take their seats. I appreciate everybody coming. Julene has offered to give our prayer tonight. I appreciate her very much. So, Julene can come up and get us started.
Thank you, Doug, for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Our dear Father in heaven, we are so grateful to be able to meet here as people who are concerned about our governance and our culture. We thank Thee for the opportunity to meet and for the articulation in our Constitution that was able to be articulated of our rights and our freedoms to gather together and to discuss things that are of great import. We are grateful for those who made it possible for us to do that tonight, and for this good venue to visit in. We are also grateful that we have one of our legislators here in Idaho to come and speak to us, and we pray that Thou will bless her and all of our legislators as they begin the legislation session of 2022. That they will be guided by the principles of the U.S. and the Idaho State Constitution, and the principles that the people as a group decided many years ago would be what Thou would have us be, since we are Thy children, and it is Thy will that we would be free and independent. We ask Thee to bless us this night, that we will have Thy Spirit to be with us, to guide us, that our ideas will comport with Thy will for us, and that we may be worthy of having the guidance that we plead for this night. Bless Barb as she speaks to us, that she'll be able to convey her thoughts and feelings, and our legislators, that they will remember that the proper role of government is to secure our rights and not to provide privileges or material goods for us, and that is our own individual effort that provides those. This is our humble prayer this night, which we ask in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Julene.
You're welcome.
Okay, can everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. A couple of things real quick. As you may recall, we've decided, Stand Up Pride on all of our meetings. What we're going to try to do is have a table here, either here or out front, to support people that have lost their jobs and that maybe started small businesses and things like that, and they can come out and set up their wares. And we're making that offer to anybody. Okay, if you have a little side business or something that you have, and you're trying to just support yourself and whatever, you're more than welcome to come and show your wares. If you are an employer that needs help or something, we ask you to come and give us something there so that we can maybe hook you up with people that are in need of help or need of a job or something. So we are going to have those tonight and for the rest of all of our meetings except for our Liberty dinners. And on that, we do have a Liberty dinner tomorrow night, and there's still a chance to sign up. Ron Nate will be our speaker. He's another representative from the Madison County area, but he's a very dynamic speaker. And if you'd like to come, we'd enjoy to have you. Sign up with Dave and Debbie down there. And it is $35 a seat, but we do feed you. And tomorrow, I guess it's brisket and stuff, so that'd be pretty good. Anyway, and also this Saturday we have Tim Barton of the Wall Builders, if you're familiar with him. He's going to be here Saturday night at 7 o'clock, and we'd like to actually pack this whole building here if we can. So everybody's invited. It's free. Bring everybody that you can, okay? It'd be a very dynamic evening that way. And he will also be here, Western Springs Cowboy Church actually has their services in this building also. And Tim will be here for their services on Sunday. Another thing that's pretty important, it's on January 27th, getting a busload of people to go to Boise to basically go to educational choice bus to Boise. What it is there's some people here that are trying to, where are you? Back there, they're hiding back there. Tom and Carolyn Harrison are trying to get some legislation in place to allow, to get money to basically follow the child. And they've been working with legislators and all that, and so we're having an opportunity actually to go to Boise on the 27th, trying to get the bus loaded up to go. It'll be a good time going. They made arrangements to actually speak with or be on what's called Capital Clarity. The Lieutenant Governor's made arrangements for that, so it ought to be actually a good time and an important way for us to be able to show the legislature that, we support this type of legislation. We need to make something happen. And so if you're interested in going, please either contact me or Tom or Carolyn and sign up for the bus. It'll be a good time. So,
is there a cost associated with the bus ride? No charge.
There's no cost for anybody except for Dennis. He's got to wear a Santa Claus costume because he took it off too early last time. So, no, there is no cost with that at all. It's actually, Tom and Carolyn have arranged to get the bus and provide refreshments and all sorts of things. So the only cost is your time, and actually it would be time well spent. Okay, time well spent on that. Also, one of our supporters here, Brent, brought a booklet out here, and he put some out on the table, and I'd encourage you to grab one and take a look at it. He thought it was important enough to bring it up and to share, so if you could do that. And with that, I'll hurry up through all of that. I'll turn it over to our guest speaker, Barbara Ehardt, Representative Barbara Ehardt. She's the legislature is going to get started up here next Monday, and she's going to tell us what it's all about and try to give us a little bit of warning. But anyway, Barbara, thank you very much for coming. Awesome. And tell us what you think, and hopefully take questions, and it's all yours now.
Awesome. Okay, do I really need this? I have my coach's voice. I'd prefer so I can use my hands. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
Okay, is that okay? Because I'm not quiet. So I have a number of thoughts that I would like to share, and we'll just kind of go from there. It's so often that I know that we get a lot of people coming, and we'll go through all of the ills of the things that we're facing, and we know about that. We're probably pretty familiar with that. So let me start with a story that some of you, I know Jolene has heard this story, maybe a few others, but the purpose of this story, especially since we have some young people here, is to help you know how one person really can make differences. So as many of you know, I spent 15 years coaching Division I women's basketball. I was at I played at Idaho State, then I went to UC Santa Barbara, then BYU, Washington State, and then back in California at Cal State Fullerton as the head women's basketball coach. When I'd been at UC Santa Barbara, we had a policy change, and we had been playing our conference games. The non-conference you schedule whenever you want. The conference games we'd been playing on Thursday, Saturday. And then there had been this change that they went to Friday, Sunday. And it had been that way. I had asked our head coach, I had kind of protested, and he allowed me, he's our head coach. I told him I didn't want to play on Sunday. But the policy was changed, and then I went from there to BYU and Washington State. Then when I came back to the Big West, we were still playing on Friday and Sundays. And so at the beginning of the year, every conference does this, and you have a huge conference meeting. So the Big West is no different, and we had huge, and this is in Irvine, California, beautiful, and huge room, and they had tables put together with cloth that looked like one huge table. And at this table, these are some of the players. And if you know anything about sports, you're talking about the major players. You had every head women's basketball coach, so like 10, every head men's basketball coach. You had every school's athletic director, and you had the school's president. You had the Big West commissioner and staff. I mean, this was a big deal. I'm a first-year head coach, and my job was to stay silent. I understood what my role was supposed to be. So we were going through, a lot of things were discussed, and then we got to the point where we were talking about what the protocol was going to be when it came to the countdown for each of the games. And so those who haven't necessarily been to a game, you get there and you have your clock, your regular game clock, but at the college level, they'll usually start at about 30 minutes. And at 25 minutes, the referees come out on the court. At this happens, and it just goes through this protocol. So as we're going through this, it was determined that at the 5-minute mark, both teams, the home and away, would go, and of course we're talking Big West, so both teams, at home and away, would go back into the locker room, and the national anthem would be played. So that's, and I raised my hand. And I'm telling you, if looks could kill, our senior women's administrator was also there, because again, I had a role. My role as a first-year coach, don't say anything, and I raised my hand, and I just said, I really appreciate that, but as for me and my team, we will remain on the court and pay tribute to our flag. And everything went silent, and then a discussion ensued. And from that comment, it was determined that every team in the Big West would remain on the floor for the national anthem. The other thing that happened, because I got my stories conflated, was in that same meeting, we were meeting then as, the Big West women head coaches and our senior women's administrator, which is that step just below the athletic director, so all women were represented. Of course, now apparently women can be represented having the XY and BM, but anyway. So we were in this meeting and we were going over again protocol, and we were talking about the Friday, Sunday games, and again I raised my hand and I said, I don't like playing on Friday, Sunday. I would like to go back to Thursday, Saturday. And I gave them 3 main reasons why we should go back to Thursday, Saturday. Now keep in mind I have to appeal to their intellect too. And so the first thing I said is that doesn't give our student athletes a day off, because we had to give them a day off, which was Monday, but they still had to go to school, so they never really had a day off. Of course, when I was coaching at BYU, we always had Sunday off. So I said they never really get a day off. 2, it's hard for the staff, to bring staff in on Sunday. That makes it difficult. They don't get a day off. And 3, I attribute it, which you're probably saying, should have done that first, but I was making a point. It, after all, is a Sabbath day. And so I asked that we go back to playing Thursday and Saturday. And after much discussion, we took a vote. And it was a 9 and 1 abstained vote to go back to Thursday and Saturday. See, just like that, just to make a little bit of a difference. And how did I make that difference? Sometimes we all have different styles, and we all have to work within our styles. And that's not to say that sometimes our styles, we all get revved up, but I had one of those aha moments years ago where with my brother and my family, I'd taught Constitution, and with one thing I was saying one time, my brother just stopped me. And he said, Barbara, you have to remember that the most important thing when you're wherever any of us are, it's not the Constitution. He said the most important thing, and he put his hand up like this, is that we are Christ-like. That's the most important thing. And then he said, wherever this is, the Constitution's somewhere here. And that was such an aha moment. How do we share the gospel? How do we share thoughts? How do we share anything? When I was in high school, I was willing to argue my faith on our bus trips, on our basketball trips with anybody. By gosh, I was going to argue them right into my faith. And it doesn't work that way. You can't do it that way. And so if we want to share our message, we have to have a message that people are willing to listen to. If we're constantly like this, and that's not to say that you can't stand up for truth and righteousness at all times and all things in all places, but again, how are we going to share that message? Okay? And so there are things in which I believe that I've had success, and I think that I've had success, my most successes have come when I've tried to remain Christ-like. Again, I fail miserably. I'm very well aware of myself, but when I try to remain Christ-like, I find that I have my most success in trying to share the message. And when you think back on some of the most memorable moments that we've been told that are in our history books, and we can take, the Constitutional Convention. I mean, when they're all gathered there and they can't get a document finished, they can't finish when they're trying to write this Constitution. They're like this. And one of our founders, who a lot of people say, he wasn't. He was one of the least religious men, yet he was incredibly religious. People don't realize how religious Benjamin Franklin actually was, but he wasn't known. Some people might have called him a heathen. He wasn't known as a religious man, but he was religious. And it was Benjamin Franklin who essentially stopped everything and reminded people that as they had been through all the work when it was in the Revolutionary War and everything that they were doing, they invoked the Lord all the time, and they hadn't been invoking the Lord. And so what did they do? He suggested and gave a most eloquent talk on invoking the Lord. And guess what happened? Things changed. So first, before I get into some of this other stuff, I just want to suggest to you that with everything in which we believe, we also believe that the Lord inspired it all, right? The Lord inspired it. And the Lord can only inspire things with the people who are willing to hear. The Lord can inspire a wickedly unhearing, let me put it this way. There's not a lot of inspiration that takes place in the middle of a bar because it's not the right setting. And so how do we create the right setting so that we can be heard and our message can be heard? So that's just kind of a thought I kind of wanted to open with. Let me jump around and just say Tim Barton is an actual friend of mine. I have been to David Barton's wall builders throughout the last 4 years. The only one I miss is when I had a knee replacement, kind of, hurried up right at that time. Literally have David and Cheryl's number in my phone. That's Tim's parents. And they just don't give that to anyone. So as a matter of fact, I was planning to go to Boise because obviously there's something called the session starting on Monday. I am kind of a last minute person, but I think I'm going to stick around because and I'd actually just spoken with wall builders today, getting the affirmation, that Tim guy was going to try and get in touch with you. But Tim is phenomenal. This place should be filled. The knowledge that David has and that Tim has and how they connect the dots with the Constitution and with our founders and with the Bible, it is just inspiring. This would be a shame not to have people here able to listen to that. One of the things that I signed up this year for, especially after Wall Builders, when I had been there in November, is I signed up for their Patriot Academy. And their Patriot, because, here's one of the things I'm realizing, that all my life I've been kind of unique, very unique in my family. We didn't grow up in my family. First off, my dad wasn't a religious man, and I know we loved the country, but we didn't talk about those things. But that was here with me. I have to tell you, third grade, I'm sitting there watching the Watergate. People are like, my kids my age, Watergate? Nobody's watching Watergate, but I was watching Watergate. So these things have always been our country. I love it. Our flag, just things I've learned about all my life. But I realize, especially the more I'm around David Barton, man, there's so much I do not know. But that man's an exception, though. They are awesome. And so I need to keep learning, and I need to keep figuring out how best to be able to share messages with those around me, whether it's just one-on-one, a little bit larger groups. And so I will recommend, and certainly Tim can help you, no doubt know, but sign up for that. And I'm signing up to also become a coach, get more groups together so that we can. It's one thing to say that and certain things that we know about the Constitution, but how does it all fit together? One of the most unique things that have been able to learn and connect. Do you realize as our founders with the construction of the Constitution, that everything and all the laws and all the principles were 100% biblically connected. Now, with the time it was written. Things aren't necessarily biblically connected right now. At the time it was written, it was all biblically connected. And you can, all of the laws and all of the principles can be attributed to the Bible. And one of the things that David takes us through on one of the CDs I have is, he even talks about the pilgrims, and as they land, and of course we all know the story because we use it in its short form many times, that they were sharing everything and yet nothing got done, right? And so they're basically almost starving until they split that land up and gave everyone their fair share to be in control of, and then started doing much better. Well, as it occurred to William Bradford as he's reading, he's reading a part of the Bible, and that a man, I'm not a very good biblical scripture quoter, but that he will either provide for himself and his family, or unless for some reason he can't, then he won't eat. And it's like, oh, no wonder this isn't working very well, kind of thing. So the point being that every constitutional principle and law was attributed to a biblical principle. And so I want to be able to speak more clearly to those biblical principles, and that's one of the reasons why I signed up for Patriot Academy. And they're just awesome, and it just ended before Christmas, and they even had Carol Swain on, and she's looking at her past self on something. She goes, my goodness, at least I learned how to speak, because the very first one she's on, now she's just found her voice. And if you've listened to her, my goodness, what a fantastic voice for our conservative movement. So do please tell your friends come to Tim Barton. Phenomenal. So I want to share with you a little bit of my legislation, and then some thoughts that may come as I'm pursuing that. But most people want to hear a little bit about, how's the Fairness in Women's Sports Act going? That had first of its kind to pass, had been introduced in 34 states, as passed in 7, and form of it in 3 others. And this year, as I was invited to go, of course, I worked with Alliance Defending Freedom, the most fantastic religious pro-life group out there to fight for our religious freedoms. I've just been so blessed over the last couple of years to work with them. So Alliance invited me in the 1st of December to go back to Washington, D.C. They were having their allies group. So it wasn't legislators. This was about their allies. So, the family policy and all of these groups throughout the country, and some are unique to the various states, to go back and here they help give them, instruction and connect with legal language and policy and things like that. It was just, I've never been, in all the various conferences I've attended, I've never been to something put on that was more professional and so more well done. But let me just share something, because again, we should at times have hopeful messages, right? I mean, we know that we're in the middle of a really tough time that Heavenly Father, we're going to say, has blessed us to be a part of. Blessed us to be a part of this? I believe so. I don't believe it's by accident that any of us are here. I actually don't believe that. So if we're here, and we're here at this particular time, maybe for such a time as this, and as we're at these events and other things trying to learn, then we have to be able to find hope and peace. Without that hope and peace, as we move forward, our lives are such miserable turmoil. If we don't have hope and peace, I don't know how you keep going forward. So let's talk about a hope and peace moment. So I flew down to DC on December 1st. I wish I'd flown on November 31st, because on December 1st, it was the hearing of the Supreme Court on the Dobbs versus Jackson State Health. And the opportunity for the first time in 48 years to overturn Roe Wade Casey. And so I was not there on the Supreme Court steps. That's why I say I wish I'd gone the night before, so I could have been there for the rally and the energy on the Supreme Court steps. I actually was on the Supreme Court steps 2 years prior by invitation of Alliance Defending Freedom and Wolf, when essentially the Supreme Court was hearing what we now know as the Bostic case. The one with the screwy ruling that is now being misinterpreted on purpose by so many. But at that time, it was a Harris funeral, with 2 others. And so I happened to be able to be there, and that's where I first introduced the legislation that I was bringing. But on December 1st, as I was there, and that evening, I was then invited by Alliance Defending Freedom and the Mississippi Attorney General, Lynn Finch. She's the one who pushed the case forward that made it to the Supreme Court. And so it was a huge room, huge gala with like 600 invited guests. Many people, many of the congressmen and senators were there at the table I sat. I forget how to pronounce his name, but the one from Montana. And on stage, of course, we had Kristen Wagner, who's often on Fox, and we had Lynn Finch, the Mississippi Attorney General, and her Solicitor General, what's his name, Scott, I just forgot his name, and then Alliance's attorney that argued the case. And so for that night, there was such hope as they shared the questions asked, including by Chief Justice Roberts, because we know he's been, sorry if you're listening, Justice Roberts, such a disappointment. So, but such hope that our future, because of these questions, can change in regards to this issue, because many of us believe that this issue is of such I don't even not disgrace. It's so upsetting to the Lord to think what we're doing to innocent children that I just can't imagine some of the punishment that I say punishment, not the right word, but what we have suffered as a nation because of that. That maybe that's the best way to put it. And so as we went forward, knowing that this decision that was issued 48 years ago was so unconstitutionally issued because it was essentially a decision made by the Supreme Court that can't make law. And so, again, much hope and faith that it will be sent back to the states, and that would be a good thing. But so then the next day, I, of course, participated on a panel with three of us. It's me, the non-attorney, a legislator, but really former coach, sitting there with Christiana Holcomb, who is always on Fox News, accomplished legal attorney that represents all the athletes that you see, from the Connecticut gals, our Idaho gals that entered our case as interveners, and others. And then on the other side, Roger Brooks, the one who actually argues and litigates before the Supreme Court. So these two incredibly accomplished judges, and me, but it was good. We with the clock in the back set it exactly an hour and 20 minutes. When it hits that time, we're done. I mean, everything they did is so professional. And as we went through what's happening with the legislation, the states that are taking it up, let me share with you why this is important. And what I knew from an early time. This thought occurred right over here. I live across the street, just down from the temple by the river. That's where my home is. And it was an August night in 2018, and I was walking around the neighborhood, walking around the river. We are so blessed with such a beautiful area in which to live. And I was pondering these things because the Connecticut girls was just making more and more news. And I predicted this probably 10 years earlier when this idea of, gender identification, I remember thinking, why, especially having been at the college level myself, why wouldn't a young man that didn't receive a scholarship to go play decide that he's just going to identify only, because you only have to do it for 4 years, identify as a female, get schooling paid for because the cost of schooling is so much, and then go back to whatever life, because you can identify as whatever and still date whoever. It didn't really matter. I mean, so that initial thought occurred. So as this was happening right now, I'm like, it's all coming back. And as I walked around pondering this, like, gosh, we need to do something about it, it literally occurred to me, because I just served 1 year, through the appointment, and was in the process of running for my office 1 year. It occurred to me, oh, you're a legislator. Why don't you bring a law? So, but it was during that time, and I'm sure all of you have experienced this, because if we're here because we believe in divine intervention. We believe that our Heavenly Father can speak to us and does speak to us and can help direct if we're trying to be open to hear what He has to say, that He can direct that which we're doing. And it was laid out to me what I needed to do with this legislation, and that this legislation was incredibly important. Now you're thinking, because I'm thinking, because I love sports. It's no secret. Spent 15 years coaching and still do it. So much more than sports. So much more than sports. But we can argue this under the guise of sport, because sport gets the parents on board. It's about their kids. Title IX actually matters. We're in the process of getting ready to celebrate our 50 years of Title IX. 50 years in Title IX, and what do we have? We have Leah Thomas breaking records at Penn, demolishing Not just beating, demolishing our women and setting NCAA records that'll never be touched again. Yeah, tell me about allowing biological males and giving them the ability to compete against women. I don't think so. But you see, this allows us to put that demarcation in the sand, because what is happening, I know you know this, in everything that we're facing right now, we are facing and I've said this for years, we are facing the redefinition of family, the redefinition of sex, the redefinition of roles, the reconstruction of the Constitution, or the complete destruction, but they won't propose it that way, the reconstruction of the Constitution and our entire way of life. And so how do you fight that? You know, we have a coalition that includes the Heritage Foundation, that includes Family Policy Alliance, of course, Alliance Defending Freedom. We've got WOLF, which is a radical feminist. We've got the American Legion of Women, I forget the new thing, but again, radical feminists. But people say, where are the feminists? They're working with us. Not all of them, because too many of them are tied into this idea of LGBT. You know what I say? I say the LGB has nothing to do with the T. I don't know why we conflate this. The things we're doing has nothing to do with the LGB. And I'm telling you, with the people with whom I've worked in all those years of coaching collegiately, you can only imagine, I worked with a lot of gay women. A lot of my players were gay women. Guess what? I love those women. Okay, they were my players. They don't agree with the T, but it's an unholy alliance, and they don't feel like they can speak up. I'm like, speak up, woman, you've got to find your voice, because other than that, we're losing what we have all fought for years and years and years. But again, it's so much more. It's like Roger said, when we can lay that demarcation, well, I guess I said demarcation, when we can finally get case law and make that point, then we can build on other things. And that has always been my point. It's about sports, but it's so much more than sports. I just got a call yesterday from the Family Policy Working Group in Indiana. They started their session on Monday, and already it's getting to the floor. They have asked me to come down and testify. Next week will be a slow week. I'm like, all right, that works. Beauty of going to Indiana next week is this. Mark Ehardt, you probably don't know who Mark Ehardt is. He and I have been texting. I actually got a Zoom call with him 18 months ago. He is the president of the NCAA, and it's headquartered in Indianapolis, where I'll be going. So I'm planning to get that phone call conversation we're supposed to have again, an in-person conversation, because at some point, now the NCAA, that's an interesting entity, and they certainly tried to punish Idaho, but with this coalition and with a lot of work and a lot of help from above, the NCAA in 2020, after it was passed, because they were being urged by the ACLU, punish Idaho, send a message, punish Idaho. They didn't. Instead, they took it off their agenda on August 4th, as we got, 300 women, to counter all of Billie Jean King and all of those silly people who are submitting all of their letter signing and requests to the NCAA to say, no, we've got other people that actually believe in opportunities for girls and women. Let's stop. So I won't keep belaboring this, other to say that we are going to see a lot of states continue to bring it this year, and we expect to have continued success. We know that the Biden administration has already drawn their line in the sand, and they're just going to allow any of you males in here that decide that you want to say you're female, all right, we'll accept you at your word, and let you do what you want. But we know that in a God-fearing nation, that doesn't work. And so we need to stick to those things that we know are right, and we need to go forward, and we need to be as Christ-like as we can without backing down. And when we get to the point where we start raising our voice, it isn't because we started there. We started here. But by gosh, let me tell you, we can go up. And that's the only thing I'm suggesting. Start where we need to and go where we have to go. But do our best to help our message be heard. Now, let me just also hit, what are a couple things I'm going to be bringing? You may find this, sometimes as a legislator, you may think, all right, that sounds a little frivolous, but let me just tell you something, because sometimes we have to enjoy what we're doing. I'm actually working with David Barton on this, and working actually with them on a couple things. But when this legislation passed in Idaho, and the governor signed it, it's about a month or two later, the state of California sent out their announcement that Idaho was being added to their list. I think at that time they had 12 states, was being added to their list as to one of the states with whom they would not do business. California now has a listing of 18 states with whom they won't do business. They really will. They just like to pretend it's like not out of this pocket, but out of this pocket. But anyway, so one of the things then that I had drawn up at LSO, and I've sent it to David because I want some of his help in getting a legislator from each of these other states. We, and we're still working through it, have a resolution that I'd like each of these 18 states with me to have introduced on the same day, saying, guess what? We don't care. We, 18 states, are not going to do business with a discriminatory state such as California that won't honor the rights of women and children and respect the family. I thought you might like this. That's what I say. Sometimes you can have a little fun and send a message, a shot right over the bow, send it right back at them. So that's one thing. Another thing that I've actually solicited David's help with is this. I know you were all aware of our special session, right? And of course, one of the frustrating things was that we felt and had put a lot of work on the House side to not only write, submit, try to get past legislation, you know, that would help all of us and help our people who'd lost their jobs, on and on and on. You know about that. You know, I too had submitted legislation that actually ended up being just like Priscilla's, took a slightly different angle, but addressing 39-3801, which allowed 14-year-olds to be able to get vaccinated without their parents' permission. I don't know, are any of you guys 14? Not quite? All right, then I won't put you on the spot and say, would you go get a shot without your parents' permission? You say, good for you. So we know that Chairman Wood not hear any of that, right? Don't expect him to hear this now in his committee either, because he made a point that he agrees with it. So guess what I did? Now, it doesn't mean it's going to pass, but sometimes you got to get creative. So I said, all right, when do we usually end up in that situation where the vaccines are given? It's usually given in somewhat of a school setting, okay? And so you know what? School setting, that's education. That's my committee. So rewrote the legislation, taking it out, or trying to take it out of health and welfare, put it in education, and then to rewrite it that says 14-year-olds and up cannot receive vaccinations without parental consent while in and under and reflective of anything to do with education. Pretty clever, I think. Come on. Now that doesn't mean it's going to get heard. That doesn't mean that we're going to have chairman like, and that doesn't mean that outside that setting it could not pass. Absolutely still can, but in a setting that's more reflective of where this would happen, that's something I'm trying to bring. But getting back to what I'm trying to do with David Barton. So in one of the things we found in the special session is that we kept hearing, not just a special session, everything leading up to this, that we kept hearing about businesses, right? That we should not, and if you're a true Republican, that we should not be able to infringe on business contracts, essentially. You all heard that, correct? And that somehow that is constitutional, and that's a right. Forgetting and remember this, the Constitution and Declaration of Independence, they're like helpmates. Okay, they do go together. They're not inseparable. They never intended to be. Our founders talked about that. And so, of course, what was the Declaration as more than anything? It was a declaration of individual rights, which set it apart from all other nations, where it was never about the individual right. It was always about the collective. Hence, Marxism, communism, it didn't exist then. But everything has been about the collective. This is about the individual. And so what I asked in having a conversation, I told, I'd been thinking about it, and I thought this occurred when I was in Washington, D.C., said, can't really do a law on this, but what if we did a resolution? Now, again, you may think resolutions are not all, do not have to be all feel-good. Resolutions, though they don't carry the enormity or anything of law, they can set precedent. And resolutions, if used correctly, can be used to reflect back on what the people or what legislators agreed to. And so what I asked David, especially with his knowledge to help me with, is, David, since we seem to be confused as to what, and I'm just going to call it line of authority, hierarchy, whatever it is, let's put that in a resolution. Let's talk about, with references to the Constitution, to our founders, with quotes, and of course, he can do it far better than I. Dennis might be able, maybe I should have gone to Dennis, he could probably have helped me with that. But let's put in a hierarchy of where our, and I'm just calling it line of authority begins. Where do we get our rights? And of course, we know that that initial line of authority comes from where? They come from the Lord. Okay, and so let's spell it out. And as you get going, you know, as you read what our founders, I mean, it's just ingenious, intended that the main authority rested with whom? We'll say the people, but it wasn't really the people. Where did the main authority rest? Within the family structure. It was within the families. That's where the authority initially came from. And that you should, anything a family can do for themselves, a family should. And you should never have to go outside the family to someone else if you can do it within the family. Now, sometimes you can accomplish things with a group of families, that an individual, and so that was the idea, that you spread. So even though we talk about it resting with the people, literally talked about the main power structure begins with the family. So from the Lord to the family and how it goes out, and they've been working on that. I got word back that they have the first rough draft ready to go. And so that's another thing I'm hoping to do. Again, resolution only, but I'm hoping, oh, that is kind. Thank you so much. I am hoping to be able to set something out that my colleagues will unanimously agree to, because we will have it pinpointed via precedent and Constitution. And then that would be something when there's confusion in the future, which we know there will be, to be able to reference. Well, remember resolution when we agreed that the line of the, so that again, sometimes there's madness to the thought process as to that which we're trying to do. So that's another thing on which I've been working. And then Doug, I am so sorry. I could just sit up here and ramble and everybody, am I okay still right now?
You're fine.
Am I fine? Okay. If I see heads nodding, I'll either get louder or stop. Or I'll get that microphone and really wake you up. Another thing on which I'm working, you probably know over the last couple years, I have worked really hard in education. I'm on the House Education Committee on parental rights. I mean, to me, and that goes back to the family structure, right? That it is all about parental rights. And one thing that, learned especially my first year was, and then started looking into it, how much sex and sexuality is in our education, and Idaho isn't even experiencing what's out there. And yet the things and the experiences that I've had and the roundabouts that I found out my first year, where we just basically, things didn't even go through education. We had health and welfare and then district departments coming in as guest speakers that parents didn't even know about, just things that were happening that I found out that first year, and then just started looking, what is really happening with our kids? Of course, then all of a sudden we start hearing about the gingerbread, the gingerbread, and then all of a sudden it's just exploding in other states that, they could be, the teachers are literally trained, this is not conjecture, they're literally trained that in kindergarten and first grade, they'll have these sessions and they'll just be sitting around and teachers say, so Johnny, you're what? You're a little boy. And Susie, oh, you're a little girl. And what makes you a girl? Oh, because you wear dresses. And Johnny, you wear pants. Well, Susie, do you ever like to wear pants? Oh, you do like to wear pants. She probably doesn't ask Johnny if he likes to wear a dress yet. But what color do you like? Oh, you like pink and purple. And well, do you like purple? I like the color purple. Oh, you like purple, Johnny? And he just starts taking them, and this is film, just starts taking it. You play trucks. Do you ever like to play truck and just, have you ever wanted to just play with a doll? Well, yeah, but is that a bad thing because you want to play with a doll? And just takes them through this confusing exercise that in the end they determine, well, so what makes you a boy or girl? This, well, if you can just, you don't have to be anything. You can be whatever you want. And then, as we're finding out, it is happening, and they are doing this, and not even telling the parents. If Johnny decides that he wants to be called Janie while he's at school and not telling mom and dad, they are hiding that. They are doing that. And I have fought against this for the last couple years. Change the legislation gave them the sex ed, because our sex ed is pretty specific with 10 parental rights on what could be taught. So just because that's what they said, oh, we can't, everybody just converge. We have to have sex ed because they're all going to get pregnant without. I'm like, oh my goodness, they're probably getting pregnant. Anyway, you know, so, be careful. I don't know who you're going to be showing this to. They're going to see, but she said that sex ed makes, and I'm like, no, okay. But you know, you wonder sometimes where these thoughts get planted. But anyway, okay, we'll give you the sex ed, but it's the sexuality. It's the telling Johnny and Janie or Susie that they don't have to be boys and girls, and hiding it from the parents, and then the books. You know, you think that they're like, I'm an English major. The great works of Twain and Hawthorne, I mean, we could go back, certainly of Shakespeare. He was one of my specialties. And I mean, I was telling Dave Lynn, it was funny, we were talking about something, I said, I think everybody should read Chaucer. He said, why? Well, okay, so I guess I have to explain that one. But we're not reading those books. Instead, we're reading some of the things you've heard about, The Bluest Eye, and these funky things that when you get into it, it's about rape. It's about incest. It's terrible. And we have somebody right here in Idaho Falls who helps me on my campaign, is a good friend that works for Family Watch. She has been a huge help to me. She reads all the stuff, I mean, to the point where it hurts her soul. It is real and it is out there. And I brought it before this. It passed on the House. It passed on our House floor after it got out of education on a party line vote. And that includes some of the people that we think always votes with the Democrats. It passed party line. That's how strongly we felt about it. It gets over there in Senate Ed, and we have 3 Republicans vote with 2 Democrats, and it can't get out of Senate Ed, and it dies 4-5. To be fair, so everybody knows, Steve Thane carried it with me. He's their chairman. Dave Lent, our senator who is the new vice chairman, voted with me. Kevin Cook from our District 30 voted with me, and Lori Den Hartog. All the rest, terrible. So it's hard to know. Gosh, to try to bring that back again, we do have a slight change in that Dan Johnson got elected as the mayor of Lewiston, but he's not giving it up per se. He's got somebody that's kind of a permanent sub, and I guess he'll probably come and go back and probably try to decide, when he needs to be there to hear what and do what vote and like that. But so as another thing I've been working on with Alliance Defending Freedom, because they, are very supportive. Their CEO, President Michael Ferris, absolutely is all about get the sex out of the school. Because I'll tell you one thing, and I firmly believe this. I'm assuming all of us in here believe that Common Core has been incredibly hurtful. Do you believe that? Okay, everybody who believes that Common Core is incredibly hurtful, please indicate by remaining seated. Okay, yeah, had to get one of those in there. As hurtful as Common Core is, I'm just going to tell you, the sexuality being taught in our school, and now let me say this too, as hurtful as critical race theory is, okay, the sexuality being taught in our school is worse. And the reason it's worse is because when we have our young kids and it gets in their developing minds and the cerebral cortex and all that, they can't erase those thoughts. Okay, they can't. You can retrain critical race. You can. I mean, I'm just being honest. You really can. I don't want it to be taught, but I'm just trying to help you understand which is the bigger evil. The sex is on purpose in our school. The Biden administration has made a point. They took away all funding that had to do with anything to do with abstinence. Now keep in mind the abstinence that we had run into wasn't real abstinence. It was just abstinence from getting pregnant. The left redefines everything. You think you're talking about something, you don't even know they redefined it. And then you find out you're not really talking about the same thing because they redefined it. They just forgot to tell us. So the abstinence program was about abstinence of getting pregnant and abstinence of getting STDs and all. That's really how their abstinence program. They've now since removed that, so they have all of that funding that was going to that program, and they doubled, another, I can't even remember, I might say something wrong, but I don't know, $5 million that is being infused, along with the money that they had, being infused into the states, into the school system, targeting the kids. And because Idaho, even with all that we had experienced, isn't even close to the other states. Idaho's being targeted, so we'll probably see it in the next year in particular. But Idaho's being targeted. So make no mistake that, and even though we have been, I appreciate Carolyn getting on board, even though we've been fighting to have the money follow the student, and regardless of how successful that is, we still have to fight to keep sex out of the schools, because these are still the kids. Not everybody's going to be homeschooled or private schooled. We're still going to have public education. Okay, it's just going to hopefully improve it more quickly, as everybody's not necessarily choosing that route. But these are the kids that your kids are still going to play with. They're still going to be on the sports teams, and they're still going to be holding positions in the community. So we have to keep fighting this fight. And so with that, no, I'm not sure this year if I bring the sex ed back. But in the meantime, what we have going is transparency in education. And so in working with ADF, they've written another and a lot to do with this model legislation, and it gives more definition to critical race theory, because it's as a matter of fact, I met with we zoomed with Dave Linton, Steve Thane, the Senate chair, and then Matt Sharp from ADF, and as we were going through this, Steve Thane goes, Chairman Thane, he's like, this is ambitious. and I, because a lot's happening, and he all knows that, and he's supporting it. This is a kind of legislation, though, we can take pieces if we have to, if it's, too much. But we have transparency in education, deals with things like critical race theory, and basically says in very legal and I's dotted, T's crossed, that parents have a right to all material being taught. It has to be on the website, has to be there. Yes, the first time it's done, that's not there, will take the teachers a little more time. Then it's just a matter of tweaks. Parents should be able to see it. Any changes, essentially, it's like my opt-in, because my parental right was a matter of opting in. See, the opt-out places all the responsibility on the kids, because it basically means if you have your kids going to school and it's opt-out, you're essentially already in it. So if the parent sends them a sheet home saying, hey, we're doing this, then you're relying on the kids to get that home to tell you about it, and then you're then relying on the kids to actually give it back to the teacher in case they're too embarrassed they happen to lose it, so they're not the only kid. But an opt-in places all the responsibility on the parents, on the adults. I mean, adult to adult. The teacher literally has to get permission from the parent. Bypass the kids. The kids should not be part of that process at all. That's irresponsible. So anyway, this legislation also deals with pronouns, because that is becoming more and more of a thing, that whether it's the teachers or the students, and they can pick these pronouns, and I'm supposed to remember, I see you and I'm sorry, you are a boy. Or you are a girl, and that is, I have a higher source to answer to than you. I will, when I reference things like June Eastwood, who is John Eastwood, because June's name is now June, I'll call June, regardless if June had been John, that's June's official name. I can call you June, but rather than, necessarily using pronouns like calling June her, I'll just say June. And I might be saying, and something we'd normally say she went, I'd say June went to get June's shoes instead of her shoe. That's how I choose to reference it, because I will indulge you in your name, that's your legal name, but nothing else. So anyway, that's another piece of legislation I have. Maybe what I should do, because, so I don't lose you, and I don't know if I've gone too long, maybe I should just slow down, stop. If there's more time I can go, but open it up to questions if I haven't yet bored you, or anything such as that.
Well, I was just wondering about what you would call the decision steps, where curriculum is decided upon whether it's taught or how it's taught. I talked to, say, a vice principal at one district here, and he says, I try to make the case that you've got to know what kind of teachers you're hiring. In other words, do they have certain beliefs that are germane to what you're talking about? Because if I'm a teacher in a district and there's constraints on, if I'm in California teaching critical race theory, I'll acquaint them with critical race theory and I'll debunk it. Okay? They need to know about Marxism and its flaws. So I could probably skirt around the California requirements to teach critical race theory. But it could work the opposite way. Say in California, if they hire a teacher with an impressive resume from the University of Utah, whose curricula stresses feminist epistemologies and feminist
Yeah.
standpoint theory and everything like that. So how do we?
Yeah,
stay-
you know, I do get that. And that so we do have our hierarchy of laws, and with that, and I give it to the State Board of Education, they really have tried to remain centered on local control. And so that local control starts with, I mean, it's as simple as this. It's your school board. That is our line of defense. It's just no simpler than that. The school board hires the superintendent, and the rest of the district takes that direction from the superintendent. That is that line of authority. I will tell you this, had an opportunity to know and speak with Dr. Shank very early on, and to be honest, if you understand the story that took place, I believe a miracle happened. And keep Dr. Shank in your prayers. I believe he's a good man, and we want to keep it that way. And I believe that District 91 has a new direction, and I'm as pleased as can be, and I believe he will unite teachers and continue to give direction, but the direction will only be as effective as the involvement of the community and the parents when all is said and done, because it's easy for all of us to get lackadaisical, lazy, if not engaged with those who are important.
So I watched what happened in the special session, and the thing that, and I'm fairly new to this state, I've only been here 7 years, but I'm trying to figure out why it is that Becky and these people can continue to shelf, what do they say, put it in a drawer, not do the work that you presented. They don't allow it to be heard. And I don't understand how that happens. That they have that kind of power to stop the will of the people who've asked you to do this work for us. How do they do that?
You know,
How do we stop them?
so she was asking about, just the will of the people. So let me answer this, because this is such a unique conundrum. When you say the will of the people, and then I will sometimes get letters from those I know not only didn't vote for me, didn't vote for me years ago, they won't vote for me now, and they're not going to vote for me in the future. And you know what they tell me? I need to do the will of the people. I mean, I'm just saying, our language is important. I need to do, and then they'll say, you work for me, as though you didn't even vote for me, and I didn't run on anything that you're saying I work for you to do. I'm like, what are we getting confused here? And so this is this unique conundrum of ideas hitting each other, and how do you proceed when conflicting ideas hit? We have Constitution, we have the Idaho State Constitution, then you get into these things that are called the House rules, and things that have been set and developed through time. And so the way I look at it, if you want to change those things from within the body, if you want to change that direction from within the body, you have to gain enough support from the legislators who are there, that are willing to work together then to bring up and change, because we don't have to worry what the Senate does when it comes to directions on how we conduct the House, meaning, because that's what you're first asking, the conduct of the House. So that is something that would be internal, and I probably would take a few more legislators, being elected, and or a change of direction. And so there will be a change of direction with, leadership. There could be brand new, leadership, and those are great times, to change. So in that what you're saying, all I'm saying is, what is the will of the people? Because I am told that all the time. And then one other thing I'm told, and I thought, sometime I should caution all of us, because I'll even get that sometimes from, not necessarily just me, but it'll come out from the Central Committee, and that very thing that, you need to represent your constituents. And I think, as people say that, Bonneville County voted, and I might get the 60 part of it wrong, something like 67% to fund full Medicare, right? We voted for that in Bonneville County. So do you want me to represent the people, or do you want me to continue to represent, and of course I have to represent the people in case that goes and everybody's watching, but, or do I continue to represent and vote over there how I presented to you that I would as I ran,
Bingo.
Yeah, yeah.
as I've conveyed myself while I served on the city council in those 4 years, not one time. Now, of course, the budget comes once. Did I ever vote to increase your property taxes? So I never voted for the budget because I didn't agree with the things that were in there. So do we do that, or do we continue to vote how we represented to you as we ran? That's why it's important to make sure that we don't allow those who are running to just kind of answer, just those nebulous, that answer could go either way or whatever you want to read into it. I get pretty specific. I'll answer you because I will try to be that person and be honest. No doubt there are times I failed, but I think if you look overall, and I think Jillian will tell you because she continues to support me financially, and I'm so grateful that I try to be that person that I represent myself as when I run.
So I have kind of a two-part question. How do you, and this is kind of asking for your opinion on both of you guys.
Okay.
How do you feel that the Speaker of the House, that stays the Speaker of the House, Mr. Becky, would support the things that you're trying to do, number one, and whether he would, be on your side or not. The other is this is a question that I asked him about a month ago at a meeting about your feelings about the nullification of unconstitutional federal laws that I believe the Constitution gives us, and I've heard Dan Barton speak on those before.
Yeah. Well, the first part is this, and recruiting or interacting with my staff or my players, I have to build relationships. And to be honest, as a I think member of any of our churches, if you try to do missionary work, okay, you have to build relationships. And if we're going to change, I actually still believe that a lot of people out there that I don't even know, I'm not even trying to put names to it. I believe that hearts and minds, unless they're so on the, left, but if they're still Republicans, I believe hearts and minds can change. Because all those years, I admit, I'm a junkie. I loved listening to Rush Limbaugh, and I loved his style. And I heard through the years, and I don't believe it was fake. I mean, I certainly can be fooled. He changed people's hearts and minds, that he was able to bring over to his side by, he didn't put him down. He wasn't condescending, and he changed. So people, I'm just telling you, I have to, you can see my voting record. It's solid, but I have to work with my colleagues, and my goal is to change hearts and minds, and push forward certainly my legislation and other legislation in which I agree. And that is how I operate. As far as federalism, I posted a long time ago, a couple years ago, on my Facebook page, and I've said it for years, it's all about the 10th. One of the things that I'm working on right now is Greater Idaho. I have been a supporter of it from the beginning. Yeah, and let me tell you, if you understand what's happening in the country today, what's going to keep us from another civil war is because of this radical federal agenda. You're going to see regions of the United States, I'm saying it first, and I've been saying it for a while, break off and basically say, and I think Florida will be the first to do it. I mean, look at how Ron DeSantis is leading out. They're going to say, you know what, Joe, we're going to make alliances with Arkansas, Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, Louisiana, and we're going to work here. And we're going to come up with our own set of rules. I believe we're headed that direction. And this is part of me. The Oregon that I'm talking about, these are rural ranchers and farmers that have been on that land for 100 years, that in many cases, when you look at how they voted for Trump, because how do you compare? They voted for Trump better than we voted for Trump. And we voted pretty well for Trump. These are like-minded people. We have to associate ourselves with like-minded people. We have a ton of people moving in here. Not only, so what does Greater Idaho give us? Not with anybody up in the Portland crazy area, because I believe that when you are a people, that we are still under the Constitution of the United States, and the Constitution of the United States is not a lawless constitution, and when your government, you have every right to seek redress from your government, and they've tried to seek redress from the Oregon legislators, and they've got none. Instead, what they get is a chop zone, lawlessness, no justice at all for the wrongs being perpetrated on them, and the laws being passed will put them out of business. It'll keep them from ranching, will not let them sell their animals anymore. And what do? They have every right to seek redress from, in my opinion, a neighboring state, and that is what they're trying to do. They're seeking redress with us. And so I've said, why shouldn't we at least have the conversation? I held a hearing on that and got my Senate counterpart to join in, and they came in, and I think it was great. So with this, if we pursue this, what are we looking at? More space, tons more space. We're looking at minerals and trees and water resources that we don't have. Coos Bay, if you go up there, more towards the northern part that's still being there, Coos Bay has been shut down. It's a deep water port. It has been shut down by the Oregon legislature for years because of environmentalism. We'll open that up. We will open that up. There's 3 parts to it that includes Oregon, Washington, and California. Not that it's all happening, we're just, but we could be, we joke about it, but we could have a direct line to the Pacific Ocean. Imagine the trade if we went that far, controlling our own destiny because we made decisions that would help us. Should we not be able to rely on our federal government? So going to federalism, I 100% believe in the 10th Amendment. Yes, I do.
So I've heard the idea of Greater Idaho, and I kind of like it because I came from Oregon.
Okay. We won't ask which part, Liam.
Well, I came from Portland.
You understand then?
I understand. I like the idea, but I haven't heard a good explanation of how it could happen. Like what obstacles have to be overcome.
Okay. I'll give you a real quick synopsis on that because, you know, we're still, in my opinion, in that kind of meet and greet and selling the idea. And right now they did do a couple months ago a preliminary poll without much explanation to anything. And it was a major polling group, and I forget, something. And over something like 56% of Idahoans favored the idea. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. They don't even know what the idea is. Then when you got into Republicans, it jumped up closer to 70%. So without this information being out there, and as we continue to try to educate, you know, it's going to get better. So the Oregon legislature has to agree to it. The Idaho legislature has to agree to it. And then Congress would. Now, in the past, whenever you've had 2 legislators agree to it, Congress has not refused it. This could be different, but they wouldn't be losing a seat, you know, especially how they're redistricted anyway. So it's not like at this time they would lose a seat or a Senate seat or anything like that. Well, of course they would lose a Senate seat. They wouldn't lose a congressional seat, so that shouldn't bother them right now. How to work out the more difficult details would be this. I believe, because I would never do anything to hurt Idaho. I was born and raised here. After living and coaching in all these other places, I made the decisions purposefully to come home because I love Idaho. But would there be a price we would have to pay for the resources that they're not using, but we would gain? Because I consider water, you wait and see. You probably already know. That's why we're not complaining like I hate the cold, but why we're all probably not complaining that much about the snow, because we know we need it. Those who were, again, growing up here, I don't know how many of you were here. I mean, Dad sent me out to shovel. There wasn't such a thing as all-wheel drive. We put chains on the car. City didn't move the snow around. You put chains on your wheels, you know? So it was a different era. The snow was like this high. I don't even know how we shoveled it. So we need this. But there will be a price to pay, I think, for water. So how we figure that out, and then there's also a false narrative that because of the discrepancy in what they're being funded, because one of the reasons that the North would let them go is because they actually are funding them, and they in many ways it would be easier because they can have their liberal policies and not have to work about the extra money. But if they came to us without all the regulations, because you have to look at it as a whole, that without all of the regulations and the opportunity to thrive, I believe they would become a huge cash resource of revenue for us, and they would hold their own. When I say for us, I just want them to hold their own. I don't want them to cost us anything, or I'm not for it. Also, the question comes up as far as drugs. 100%, that would be out, because if they want to come to Idaho and be part of Idaho, then they don't get to do the drug business. That would have to be pushed all the way back into Oregon. Now think of that though. That would be another huge win for us, because right now, talk about it all the time. You talked about it on the floor. If you just cross that line from the Idaho border into the Oregon border, you just see Idaho plates, Idaho plates, Idaho plates over there buying drugs. So we push it farther away from Idaho, or like from where our populous area is right now. That's a win, right? That's a win. So anyway, lots to be done, but just in a nutshell, those are three main things that have to be done.
One of the things I'd like an answer to is there seems to be a lot of work that goes into putting together these bills. There's a lot of work that goes into putting together these bills, these ideas that we talked about. And it happens outside of the normal people that do that, and it goes to those people, that committee that does that. And if the committee leader says, I don't like it, puts it in his drawer, that's the end of it. How does that happen, and what do you do to get around that when it's just one person who's holding everything up?
That has.
It's happened over and over again.
It has. It's also happened, to the left, because there's a lot of legislation that they would just flood us, that they try to do anyway, that we'd be dealing with. So the process is, I've had the opportunity to travel to other states or even testify remotely. It is interesting to see how other states, there are a lot of ways that this can be handled. We shouldn't be like locked into one. That's the beauty of new leadership. So if you say every Tom, Dick, and Harry idea gets a hearing, we could become a full-time legislator, And so what I think would be the simplest way to go about it, but this is just what I think. So, right now it would have to come with new leadership. I believe two things. One thing I've noticed in other states is that every legislator, well, not every state, but in some of the states, every legislator is promised a 1 or 2 bill hearing. Doesn't mean it gets out of the committee, but they can have like 1 or 2 pieces of legislation that they're guaranteed in that germane committee to get a hearing. So that's one way, in looking at changing things. So something that you were really important to you could get a hearing. Or what I think probably, like I kind of think it could be a hybrid of both, like maybe 1, not 2 for sure. Or if you have a piece, because there's a lot of legislation that comes to House Ed. I'm actually glad we don't hear, but I get what you're saying. So if I'm bringing something to House Ed, and the chairman may not want to, I think that if maybe it's a piece of paper, if you can get half the committee to agree, that means you have to take and sit down and explain your legislation to all the committee members. If you can get half the committee members to agree they'd like to hear it, then it should get a hearing. That way you're not stuck on every piece of legislation that could be imagined. And let your imagination go, because it does go both ways. I don't agree with it, I'm just giving you an idea. Trust me, it goes both ways. There's some really bad stuff out there that are some of the things I'm fighting in education that they would like, for example, to be there. So I think the easiest thing is to say, you know what, go work, go get half the committee to agree, because if you can't get half the committee to agree, why should it be, it's going to die anyway. So do your work and go, that's what I'd say. Do your work and get half the committee. I think that'd be a simple out.
So Barb,
yeah.
So does that have to be changed in a House rule setting? It's a
Yeah.
rule, right, in House and Senate?
Yeah, it probably would. And with this upcoming year, not this one, but in change, I think that'll be the perfect time to change. Trust me, I've been taking a lot of notes with all these states where I've been visiting on things that I'm like, I kind of like that idea. I really do like the idea, for example, everybody should be able to have just one legislation, their favorite, should at least get a hearing. But again, I actually, you know, if everybody hated it and it was just going down in flames anyway, if I had to do my due diligence, you know, and you can't, that way I could have 20 pieces of legislation, I've got to pick and choose. There's no way you're going to get, you know, have 20 pieces of legislation to get half of the, and that doesn't, anyway, that's just a thought. So, but it's not going to happen on this one. These kind of things would need to happen with change. And I think they can. I don't think it's a radical thought. Just to get half the committee.
Is
just
it a
agree.
vote of the membership?
I think so. I may not know that exact answer to that, but I do know other states have other ways of dealing with this, and we can change. Anything can change. We're the legislators. We can change it. I mean, we can. So, but it won't change this year. I know it won't change this year. That's why I got creative on the 14-year-olds, and like, okay, if I know it's not going to get anything in health and welfare, let's take it to education. Anyway, so he's raised his hand a couple times.
Thank you for coming, Barbara. Good to
You
see
are welcome.
My question has to do with voter fraud. And will you be proposing or will you be supporting any legislation that has to do with voter fraud in Idaho? And do you think it's a problem?
Oh, yeah. Heritage Foundation, did you guys see what they released? You didn't see Heritage Foundation, this is a few weeks back, did an in-depth look into the states and voter fraud and their election laws. Honest to heck, I was kind of shocked at where we were. I think, so it was in the wrong way, so the bad way, if I can't remember which way it went, we're like 34th or 17th, like bad, not good, bad. So, so if we're going down or up, and so I'll tell you this much, that I'm not working on that kind of legislation because, well, I do have one piece on election, but I know that Mary Sousa and Dorothy Moon in particular, and Gayan DeMorant have been working on that. So there's some people that are already farther along, and I will 100% vote for anything that continues to, because election fraud, voter fraud is what screws with our republic. If you cannot, and we already know, I don't even have to go into, I'll just tell you, as sure as I'm standing here, I know who won the election, and it's not the gentleman in office. I use that word loosely. So we have, I was saddened actually to see us so far down after and I trust, I work with the Heritage Foundation. I know they did good stuff. Now, just real quickly, one of the things that I'm bringing that isn't exactly in regards to this, but I brought it last year. It got passed the House, but it was too late. They didn't want to send it to the Senate. Well, it got sent to the Senate. Patty Ann, not in a bad way, she wasn't going to hear it. She felt it was too late. I'm like, gosh, dang it. So given some of you were involved in this, we went through a recall process with our District 91, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of work was put into that. And that's happened in Ada County. And my colleague, actually my best friend there, Gayan DeMorant, has also experienced that. We're even starting that recall process for trustees, elicited a resignation. But then the problem was the very people that they felt they were trying to fight went ahead and chose somebody else, again, probably one of their friends, somebody that agrees with how they feel. So the very people that you were frustrated with, somebody like unto them got put back in. And so here we're in a situation where we're working on a recall, and many of our, Idaho Falls residents were working on a recall because we felt like we weren't being heard for our children. And so what was frustrating to me then is to think, my goodness, we are literally being torn apart. And the way it happened on the city council when I was serving, was when Dee Whittier passed away, somebody got appointed and they served the whole time until, the next possible election. So my legislation says this, only in regards to trustees, that if a trustee is officially recalled, that no one will serve in that spot, no one will be appointed if, and I believe it's in 90 days, if within 90 days and so I'm not looking to cost anybody money. If a normally already scheduled election is coming up, so maybe they got recalled the end of February, and then we have the May election coming up. And if that fell within 90 days, we already have an election coming up. So because if we appoint somebody, they have the advantage of being the incumbent. So I said, nobody gets to be appointed. Then they can just run for the seat. Just let the people then decide. So that's the first part. But if it extends longer than that, then somebody will be appointed with the word, even though I specifically said temporary, so that it could be attached. Temporary until the next possible election, meaning not wait another year and a half, the next possible election, so that we could then have a fair and balanced runoff without tearing the community apart because this group chose this person as opposed to that. Because when you do a school election, a trustee, it really does tear at the heart of the community. And I think the only way to heal that, in all honesty, is to have an election. So that's the extent of election law in which I'm dealing with, and I believe it's good and it's solid and it makes sense. And we shouldn't just be able to have those on the committee, just appoint somebody else they want when the people worked really hard for a purpose. You agree? Yeah, you are very welcome. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, so just to follow up on that, Barb, who would we contact for pushing a full forensic audit for voter fraud?
Do you know, I know I need to be really careful. I believe that probably would not be something that would necessarily, that's got to be the Secretary of State's office. I mean, and that's what we've got a couple of, good people running to do to change the way that whole system works. And so I believe that I work really closely with Mary Sousa, and I'm really close with Dorothy Moon. I believe with all my heart, both of them are going to do that very thing. And so, I believe we need that change to make that happen. I'm not so sure everybody else running for that position believes that, if you know what I mean. So,
Dorothy Moon, Priscilla, Giddings, Ron Nate, they're all hot on that corruption for our voting. They realize there's corruption in that.
Yeah, Heritage, like I said, that's it. So I think we need a change in the Secretary of State. The other thing that we need a change in that will be very helpful, a helpmate to that, in my opinion, is our Attorney Generals. Because we need an Attorney General who will, get up and absolutely say, yeah, we got to do this, we got to fight, and we're gonna. I look at some of these other states, I'm like, man, so. Yeah, but and it doesn't hurt that Raul is also a friend, and that Raul joined our lawsuit on the on the Fairness of Women's Sports. Raul is one of the Idaho attorneys, because representing the 2 Idaho State athletes as interveners. I mean, Alliance Defending Freedom represents them, but when it's in the federal district court in Idaho, you have to have an Idaho attorney also, and that is not. It's both from the same firm, Raul Labrador. They used his name nationally, but it's also Bruce Skog, who is a fellow legislator. So just an FYI, kind of fun. I appreciate those guys.
What about Bruce Scott?
They're partners. So Bruce, both of them are the Idaho attorneys working with Alliance Defending Freedom on our legislation, representing the 2 gals that are interveners.
Okay, I just have a couple questions about education. I have 5 children, and they're in the district here locally school system, some of them are. And a question I have is, you mentioned Common Core. And a few years ago, when my children were smaller, I heard a lot of that on the news, heard really people fired up for it, against it. In your opinion, or in evidence you have seen, first question is, what damage has that done to our school system? And second of all, you mentioned you had a friend that did Family
Family Watch.
The Watch, yeah, Family Watch for the books. When your children bring home books that have explicit sexual content in them, is it? Can you reach out to this person? Like, what can we do as parents? Because it's in our local library, it's in our school, it's everywhere, and they just feel that everybody needs to have it. Have option to say yes or no to it. That's what our public library guy said.
Yeah.
The chair said, everybody needs to have an option to have it, and then it's parents' choices to okay it or not okay it.
Well, let me see if I can.
Common Core and then the other one.
Yeah, hit the Common Core. The longer you're in it, I think the harder it is to measure, because the measuring stick is like the year before. But the year before was Common Core, and the year before, and I actually believe that we have good teachers, but the teachers, also get stuck in the Common Core, and the simplest way to explain a lot of it is you teach to the test, and that SBAC. I mean, you'll hear Ron, Nate, and all of it needs to go. So let me tell you this: 2 years ago, in our House and our Senate education, we wrote like our version of a joint, House and Senate education resolution, giving direction to our state Department of Education and our Idaho State Board of Education. We in the House insisted we wanted to sign it. We wanted our names there. We were changing the direction, and we are going to get rid of Common Core. That's easier said than done, because that meant now you have to meet. There's one primary person from here that was involved heavily. That is Gary Marshall. You may or may not know Gary. I am telling you, he has been a fighter. He worked as a high school teacher, but then he'd been at BYU Idaho for years and actually directed teaching teachers how to teach. He was as eloquent as anyone, and then Dorothy Moon also ended up on that committee. But Gary was one of the chairs in trying to get rid of Common Core. The advantage Gary had is because he had trained the teachers. He knew the language and what had to happen. But I'm telling you, the education lobbyists, that's what Wendy says we should call them lobbyists, really, they're organized, they just fight it all the way. And so, it's no secret, this is Gary's last year. He's not running again. And I think he's going to give it all he can, and I'm absolutely 100% going to help, to get rid of that. So that's a harder question, because maybe a simple way, ask Tim Barton. One of the things that David does on his education, that some of the tapes that I listen to, he gets out the education primer that and associated with the Bible that the kids in first grade 200-300 years ago. So he goes through some of the things, and he'll just talk you through it. And he's talking about, and then they have to problem solve just thinking about it. And he reads this problem solve, and he's saying they're like in 4th or 5th grade. Okay, let me tell you what I do. I listen to this, I reverse that, I listen again. I'm like, holy Hannah, I'm not sure I can problem solve that right now. So if we compare it to where our kids were, we're not there.
What do you not like about it?
Common Core. Well, that'll take a long time, so I'm not gonna. It was easier just to say the SBAC, the test, right now. Okay. But you said, where are we in that? I'm just saying, compared to our kids, what they had to know a couple hundred years ago, I don't believe our kids are there within some of the stuff that. I mean, obviously we've learned more things since then, but some of the things we choose to teach our kids are not academic related. We're spending way too much time on social, emotional. The whole Idaho Education Association blew up against me 2 years ago when I decried. I was the first one to decry social emotional learning. Oh, you would have thought that I just said kids can never again eat breakfast. It was awful. Now, guess what? Guess who's right? Once again, we're finding out social emotional learning is terrible. And our teachers, and as much as anything, I said, I was speaking on behalf of our teachers, and our teachers find another thing is political instead of listening to what I was saying. They're not equipped to teach this, nor should every kid be subjected to that. The second part on any of you, when you start to see the sex stuff come in from your school stuff, I would like to know. Now I'm trying to figure out how to get that to give me more leverage, to be able to get something passed on the Senate side. I don't know that Stephanie necessarily, I'll ask her, Stephanie wouldn't necessarily want everybody just all of a sudden calling her. I probably shouldn't even said her name. Sorry, Steph. Didn't say your last name. But yeah, it's a tough issue. Can I tell you what I had suggested to somebody, but it needs to be organized? What we can do as far as the libraries? So easy, because they're going to keep bringing that stuff. So guess what? we get organized. What, you can check out a book for a month? Go check them all out. I mean, have different people. I mean, you check them all out, keep them for a month, turn them in, let somebody else check them all out. Check all the trash out, and we'll just keep it at our house for a month. I'm just telling you, to everything they do, there's an answer, but it does take some continued organization. So anyway, just a thought with our library.
I just had a question about the kind of things that you might be able to do to kind of safeguard us against another kind of lockdown. Some of the things that happened during the COVID times, like people getting arrested for being outside, singing hymns, and women getting arrested, in playgrounds, going to church, people getting locked down, your businesses getting shut down, this kind of stuff. I know some people are dying from COVID, but what did we fight World War II for? What did we do all these things? To maintain our way of life. And our kids are gonna have, I have a newborn daughter. I want her to inherit a world where she'll have something. I'm scared that, this is an exercise in what the government can get away with. And I'm scared that they're gonna do it again. It's very political. This whole thing has been very political. My mother, was dying during the COVID times, and then the politicians in Los Angeles, where I'm from, they said, oh, go out and riot for George Floyd now. Even though people were told that they couldn't go outside, they needed to, not gather. It's like, this whole thing has been political, and I'm tired of it. I don't want this coming back again. I'm seeing what...
Well, you guys, you do recognize we're in a different, we have entered a different world. I will tell you unequivocally, this is not by accident. We did not accidentally get here. So I'll just call them the powers that be. Some people may call them deep state, Getty Amber robbers. I mean, they're known by a lot of names. Bilderbergs, it goes deeper than that. This is not by accident. So what we have to understand is, again, it goes back to, we are literally in a war before we actually hit the war. It's the deconstruction of the Constitution, of the family, of sex, of everything that we have known, that we have fought for. And I actually believe that as you watch some of the movements as they come across, Jolene, I think, has heard me say this in other forums, I won't go into too much detail, but what has stood in the way, it's not been the government that has said, no, that's not right, that's not right. And so you think about this, because I believe it ultimately comes back to one thing, because I believe that's where the real battle is. But what stood in the way of some of these movements that have absolutely deconstructed our families has been religion. Because religion has still been able to say that that's not right. So part of the goal in all of this, and it's no wonder that religious institutions were shut down, part of the goal is to shut up religion. Make no mistake. Because you look at what happened with Marxism and communist Russia and China, the pattern's been repeated, even during Nazi Germany. When a people can look to a higher authority, why do you think even some of the Jews survived? I mean, it was a hellish situation. When you read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, anybody read that? Viktor Frankl was part of Auschwitz and then taught logotherapy and all. They had to go to a higher source. That's the only way to survive. So what is the other side? Because I do believe there's another side. What are they trying to do? We eliminate religion. We eliminate that higher source, and when you take away, and what comes with a higher source, but hope. See, there is a secular hope, but not as secular as people think. Hope is really rooted in religion. And hope is rooted in something, it's that hoping for something better in the worst of circumstances. So we are at war, and they are trying to change our way of life. And people, I mean, in many ways, they have been successful. So what is it that we do? And everything, I mean, and I think you even said, what is it I can do? I guarantee you, I fight, and that, as a matter of fact, I'm grateful I still have a job at Apple because I've spent way too much time. I mean, I actually have a job. People say, oh, we don't want to be full-time legislators, but yet you want us to work all the time? I actually have a job. Unless you want to donate, Doug, you can start taking up money so I can work more, so I can have an income. You know, so I get tired of some of these false narratives designed to take you off the track. Oh yeah, we don't want our idle legislators to be full-time. Let me tell you what, we're not. I don't get paid even close to a full-time wage on the things that I do. But certainly here, mayor and city council, right now, and I've said it before, you know, this is the irony. When I was on the city council, I was considered the most conservative, and I was. Then you go through everybody, and then here's John Radford over here. And so, John, if you happen to hear this, I'm giving you kudos, a shout out. Okay, from where we are, I am telling you right now, even though some of those same people are there, John's the most conservative. Do you know John Radford, as a Democrat, has started, I mean, he's even told me, Barb, I'm kind of taking your spot. He started voting no against the budget and at other things, because he's like, wait a minute, this is too much. We have to stay involved with our city council, with our counties, you know, and we, unfortunately, we just had an election. I'm sorry. I mean, people thought at one point I was going to run for mayor again, and it just wasn't working out. One of my key people, her daughter was killed, her 17-year-old daughter, in a car accident a few months, you know, literally about the time we were supposed to, anyway, it just was not working out. And, but we need people to represent us. But when the mayor and city council not this past one, but just over a year ago, when they stood there, and I was watching that one, and decided they're going to vote for a process of citation and prosecution for anyone who gathered in groups of more than 10, Chad Christensen and I held a couple of big rallies and showed up to say we are not going to do this. And it's not just a rally. With this last session, I think some of you heard me talk about this before. You know, my most successful piece of legislation that passed the last session, and it actually didn't pass, so I guess it didn't pass, it was HCR2. HCR2, Chairman Brent Crane and I were running it together because I had been working with a lot of parents here. I mean, half the time all I do is work with the parental groups to get our parents to be able to just go watch their kids in these freaking empty gyms and football stadiums that were outside for the sports, and grandparents who know they only have a few more years on this earth, and they are choosing to watch their grandkids because they want to choose to do that, going back to your point. And nobody would open up, and we had even Debbie Critchfield working with us, and it just like stopped at the governor's office. So Brent Crane and I are running HCR2. There would be a concurrent resolution that if three quarters of the House and 3/4 of the Senate vote on it, it doesn't have to go to the governor. So as it's going through, and it gets through, you know, we get it through, going through state affair, and we get it through state affair, and it's just got momentum. The Senate's all on board because they're being again, I told you, this is the power of sports. It is. You start messing with somebody's sports and the grandparents' sports and the aunts and uncles and the neighbors, and it gets people, you think, what should be religion? Well, it's a religion of sports. Anyway, so everybody was on board. Open it the freak up. And so our legislation would have opened everything up, not just sports, but we were talking a lot about sports. So here's the irony. It was, I think we were in the 3rd week, and I just finished the House Education. I didn't understand. We had Andy Grover, the new administrator, or executive director of administrators. He's like wanting to talk to me, follows me back to my office, and he's saying, you know, Representative, can't we just, you know, work this out? And I'm looking at him, I'm thinking, Andy, do you know everything we've done? And all the parents in Southeast Idaho, and they're traveling to Boise? And he's like, what if we go 20%? And I look at him, because I truly didn't understand why. I didn't understand, I'll tell you in a minute. And I go, Andy, we're way past 20%. Like, we tried that, and they wouldn't agree to it. Just 20%, open the gym up. And so what the governor had that was on a Wednesday. What I didn't realize until a little bit later, on Tuesday, the governor had made an announcement that said, sports are a petri dish of COVID. Okay. So he said that on Tuesday. Wednesday, after Andy has this conversation, I guess it didn't go well, but I didn't know he's there on behest of the governor. So Wednesday, later in the afternoon, we get this announcement that the governor is going to be making an announcement about opening venues up on Thursday. Then on Thursday, he makes this announcement that we're going to open everything up, including the sports venues, to 40%. And that was enough to squell the Senate. So they, you know, we ended up passing this on the House, but the Senate, they were fine with 40%. But, you know, but if it hadn't been for that, they would have voted for the whole thing. So I'm just saying that there are so many things that we're fighting for all the time. The key is still, honestly, and I mean, we got to keep electing good people. There's no doubt about that. But when you're in the middle of your session, you have what you have. It's like, playing basketball, I wish I had, speaking of girls, I wish I had that 6'7" center, but I got to do with you. You're 6 foot, and you're going to have to guide those 6'4", 6'5" girls. You go with the people you got. And so I will continue to work to create relationships with those people with whom I work and to sell the thoughts and ideas and why it's important. And then with all of us, let's continue to work to put the very best people that we can that will help us fight. It's a twofold, I think, Carolyn.
Hi, Barbara.
Hey, Carolyn.
Talking about COVID, Tom and I, when we first saw what was happening to our schools, well, our grandkids and my daughter went to a broken school. And a lot of people are not able to go to a broken school or high school, just can't get the funding.
Yeah.
So that's kind of when we started thinking, these parents need to get involved. Number one, the apex should be right here for our youth. That's how it's covered. So it's such a win-win for our kids. They wake up and, every day they're saluting the flag and thanking God for this wonderful country. It's where we should be.
Yep.
And that's where Tom and I started. We really started with home. We could see our grandkids. They didn't wear masks for long. For 2 years, there hasn't been some distancing. There hasn't, and they have been healthy. There have been. If you're going to look for a petri dish of something that's worked well, leave Mother Nature alone and revere the dear Lord. That's
Yeah. No, I agree.
So this is a funding question, okay?
I may not be as good on funding. I'm not on
Okay.
JFAC.
I'm sure you're not as bad as some,
Okay.
okay? I mean, I've seen.
Oh, I meant if you're asking how to, okay, go ahead.
No, funding for your campaign, for example. I mean, I was going to meet Mr. Becky a while back. He has taken money 4 times from Pfizer, and he admitted to it. Our governor has taken a considerable amount of money from Big Pharma and medical groups, which I believe have a tendency to sway their opinion and sway what they do. How about you?
So this is an interesting question, and I'll answer this way, because when I was first appointed, Brian, do any of you know Brian Zollinger, who is my seatmate? Yeah. So, and I will say I've worked very hard, and we're working very well together with Marco Erickson. But Brian and I we were just known. I don't mean because of it, like the dynamic duo. We just were great seatmates. We were constantly talking. Our offices were right by each other. We worked and represented you very well together. And so when we had early on, after, I'm done being appointed, so now you go into the election season, and we were meeting, because lobbyists, you can meet with lobbyists, we can meet with you. It's okay to meet with people, guys. I have an office at Port of Vallarta, and it's always in the same place, has been since I was on the city council, and that's where I meet with people, because I don't want to meet in their office where I feel like they have, kind of a hand up and there comes, let's just meet, let's break bread. It's kind of that idea. And it helps relax everyone. So as we were meeting there and lobbyists bringing money, I remember talking with Brian about this, and it's like, do we take money? And one of them giving us money was the tobacco industry. Now, I don't smoke, but guess what? Even when I was on the city council, this might have been just before you and I were running, but there was the big to-do where they were eliminating the possibility of smoking. You couldn't smoke in a restaurant, and people were like, well, I don't want to have to go into a restaurant that's filled with smoke, and I'm like, then don't go there. Well, it's not right that employees would have to work in a restaurant filled with smoke. Then they don't have to work there, because I think if a restaurant wants to be a smoking restaurant, I personally think they should be able to do that. Now, I do believe that there are morals. I don't think a restaurant should be able to have nude dancing. You're like, how do you, because I also would tell you this, I'm not a libertarian. I do believe that and even David Barton will tell you that you cannot believe literally in the foundational principles of the Constitution and be a libertarian. because we have morals. What was it? John Adams said that this Constitution was made holy for religious and moral people, or made for religious and moral people. It's holy and adequate for any other. Religion and morals matter, and that means religion and morals, because libertarians say just do whatever you want, so long as no, you can't do whatever you want, or you lose your country and you lose your culture. So, in kind of then in regards to taking money, Brian's like, Barbara, if you pick and choose when it comes to lobbyists, now I'm not saying this is, I'm just telling you what he told me. And, Wendy said the same thing. And so I pondered it. So I don't necessarily have an easy answer. I'm not one that gets a ton of money donated, but I also have to take it because something like $80,000 was poured into my opponent's campaign. And I didn't even come close to raising that. So until you guys open up your pocketbooks, I'm kind of stuck. But he said if you start picking and choosing who you take it from, then you're going to look obligated to those people from whom you took it because you refused others. It's an interest. So when it comes to campaign money, all I'm saying is, as some people have started to post what some people have taken, I've gone back through because some of my checks now from individuals, you can find some $1,000 checks. So am I now beholding to that individual? You may say, well, that's fine because they're a really conservative person. But is that fine because they're a really conservative person to think? I'm just saying, think this through. Because everyone who gives us money then in theory we're beholding to, right? Or no. I think I've proven that when somebody gives me, these are my principles and this is how I'm going to vote. And I absolutely appreciate your support if you feel like you can give me money. And I have had people give me money that absolutely know I'm not supporting their general ideas. It's a hard question. I don't have easy answers, but everyone who donates money, in theory, you can say that somebody's obliged to, whether they're an individual or corporate. What's the difference when individuals give, $2,000 for them and their spouse, and then you get $300 from, as a matter of fact, I can't even remember. I don't think Blue Cross has given me any money, but they might have given me a $300 check. I should go check. But do I feel obligated to them? Do you see what I'm saying? It's kind of a conundrum, guys. There's not an easy answer on that.
It's their choice to give it to you.
It's their choice. See, Jolene, I won't say how much, has given me money. Am I obliged to her? Can I just tell you that, she'll send out general emails, but she has never called me on the phone and said, hey, Barbara, will you, because I think she trusts the way I vote, but I need you to do this. She hasn't, so she's one of the good ones. She doesn't think I'm obliged to vote, because there'd be a lot of funky votes. How would you even vote? You're bound to have conflicting votes. I don't know, guys. I could be as guilty as the next person, but I have always voted the way I portrayed myself. I haven't strayed.
That's the way it should be.
Okay, we'll allow you to clap for me. Okay, on that answer.
Right now, the state of Idaho has $1 billion surplus. We have heard that they're talking about doing something in the future to avoid $1 billion surplus. The question is, what are they going to do with the $1 billion?
Yeah, that's yet to be determined. I don't know how you avoid $1 billion.
There's been discussion about,
yep.
There's a lot of needs in the state, there's no doubt about it, and water being one of them. But has there been any discussion about lowering taxes or anything?
That's what we've been doing for the last couple of years. We've been lowering the income. It's me personally, a lot of ideas, but how do you get it passed? Remember, it's a bicameral. Got to get through the House and the Senate. Property taxes are really a byproduct of your local entities. There are a lot of taxing entities. Primarily you have cities, counties, and schools, but you also have fire departments. So I would love to be able to take that money and figure out a way to do one of a couple things. I know what's probably going to happen is it's going to be given back in lowering the income tax, which, just hear me, I don't really care as much about the income tax as others. I care more about property tax, but it's not a matter of shifting and say, oh, let's get a bigger homeowner's exemption. Sorry, people, I could go into that. That's not the answer. That just shifts the burden. The only way you lower property taxes is to reduce spending. It's as simple as that. You can't shift it and say you lower property taxes. All you did was shift the burden.
Mm-hmm.
And many of you, even with the burden shifted, wouldn't receive any of the benefits. It would just be if you had that great big, $500,000 home, which I don't have, I would receive nothing from that shift.
What about the $1 billion?
So with the $1 billion, as I said, it's probably going to go, a lot of it, back to, you got an income tax relief check. From what I can tell, a lot of people are generally feeling that they're going to want to address income taxes. Me, if I had my way, there are a lot of creative ways in saying, okay, this isn't going to happen, but I'm just saying, some are talking, what if we paid off school levies and then somehow backfilled this with da-da-da-da-da, and they said you could never have a school levy again. And that, I wish we could get creative in reducing entities that can tax against your property, and then just slowly walk that back until we are left with cities and counties. But anyway, so what will probably happen, income, what I would rather do is also then take it to schools and say, you know what, we're going to take this money, it'll go out this long, and we're going to replace the dependency on the federal government. There are a lot of things to do. Idaho is probably going to continue to see an increase because it's a lot of people moving in. A lot of business is happening here, despite the fact that all the economic major Hewlett-Packard and all said, if we pass fairness in women's sports, nobody's going to come. We're going to lose our economic advantage. And what I tell the other states is Idaho is thriving. Those states that support rolling back regulations and support women, support children, support families, support religion, support our First Amendment, Second Amendment, Constitution, those states are thriving. Ask Idaho, ask Florida, ask those kind of states. So I no easy answer to that, but it's going to take a lot of people with a lot of ideas. We'll see how that, but money will be given back. It'll be given back. You can just shout.
Okay, so you mentioned with the lobbyists that the tobacco industry backs you. I don't care about smoking. I have no problem with smoking. My problem with the whole idea, we don't care who gives food, is that our governor mandated that every state employee must use that product or lose their job. I don't imagine you ever thought of mandating that everybody in the state of Idaho smokes. That's the problem I have with
You're in good company with that.
What?
You're in good company with that.
Yeah, so I do think that that's an issue.
Yep.
So, I don't imagine it was your intention to ever mandate or use products of the tobacco company. So I do think.
I might be. Are you just using that as an analogy, or was there something that the tobacco company did that I don't know what you're talking about?
The government mandate that every state employee uses the products of Pfizer and the other pharmaceuticals.
Oh, are they tobacco?
No, he's just using it as an analogy.
Oh, that's why I was saying. Are you? That's why I asked.
Like Governor Little got a bunch of money and now.
No. I know. That's what I was saying. Are you talking about? Yeah. You know what? Can I just let you know that was going to happen anyway, because that's happened in every single state. It's not just little. And my point is what I already said. This was a great big plan, people. This was not by accident. So if we don't like what happened, we've got to change who's making the decision. But for your FYI, 391, 392, and 393 was passed, even though the governor vetoed the first two bills, the House and Senate big bills, to roll back his powers. One of the things I said, and I was absolutely one of the leading people who said, we cannot go home if we don't pass something. So even though it should have already been in the law, and it was, but governor cannot write law, governor cannot change constitution, governor cannot declare one business essential over another, so we did get those passed.
So I have one other thing, and you were talking about these books in the schools, and that the argument is that all these people got to have a voice and the kids got to have a choice of what they read. That's essentially what I heard. That's obviously not true, because I'm pretty sure.
No, that's what she said. The library said.
Yeah.
That's what
the library.
I don't
said
agree
that.
with him, but that's what he told
That's
me.
what, and they have said that.
Yeah.
Right.
The library said that.
I don't understand how that holds water, because I'm pretty sure that that library would not allow reading material from neo-Nazi groups or KKK. I'm sure that wouldn't be in the library. So I'm not saying I want to see those things in the library, but that's a BS excuse.
And before we say BS, we better check and see if it's there, because I mean, I literally don't know, but I do know the sex books are there. I do know that. So, yeah. So, but the library is a byproduct of your taxes, and the city council has say over that, but the library also has a library governing board, and it is possible to influence that too. It's also possible to show up when they decide to have their what do you call it? Their, what's the guys that dress up as girls?
Cross-dressers?
Oh, no.
Drag queen hours?
Drag queen hours. You know, it's possible. If you can't do anything else, you show up and make sure there's no room for kids. I mean, there's ways to combat this, but you know, we also have to be willing to go. Imagine if it was filled with parents and didn't let the kids see anything. Let those drag queens entertain themselves, and we can just look at them and boom.
Are they doing that at our library?
Not yet, but we have to stay diligent, because they've done it in Pocatello. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
They've done drag queen story hour at Pocatello Live.
For little kids.
It's always for kids.
So, my understanding is that the town is planning for 20% increase in population in the next 2 years, which is where all the apartments are being built, which means that with more population there's going to be more crime. I want to know if you know if there is any safeguards to prevent the prisons from allowing violent trans men into the women's prison.
We're working on that. Did you hear what she said? She's talking about the prisons and this push now to allow biological males to identify as women. It has hurt our women in California terribly, and the groups that we're working with, Wolf and bye you guys, they are working on that, because it is not, these are not real. These are purposeful. So obviously we lost the Edna, whatever his name was, that wanted the sex change, and so it's a Biden administration. Prisons have a lot of federal, and that's what makes it hard, the federal money. But we're fighting. So,
okay, it's getting pretty late, and they're getting a little noisy over there. But I'm have one more question here one more question, and then we'll let you wrap up.
Okay, so you had mentioned CRT in schools. That has been an ambiguous term floated around for a little while. I mean, it definitely comes from real philosophies, and real people have written ideas about it. But when you speak of critical race theory, how do you define it, and what are you looking for in the schools that people would be implementing? Because obviously they're not saying, oh, this is CRT, I'm teaching it. They're teaching the concept in different ways. So what is your definition of CRT, and what can we be aware of to notice it?
You know, on some of these things, we just have to keep it simple as we continue to learn, and that is teaching that one race or group of people is superior and another is inferior. It is just simplest put that way, and it is definitely more of the, this overall approach than necessarily a specific, but with the 1619 project and all that, there is a lot of that going on. So and hence the reason, I guarantee you, if the money can follow the child, something we've been working on for a long time, if the money can follow the child, that will help to change education, public education, quicker than anything. Because imagine, if you have school A and school B, and school A not only is overcrowded, but has a ton of people wanting to get in with money because they like the way they're teaching, they will create an addition while school B over here is begging you to come because they need your money. So money's got to follow the
But
kids.
don't schools get funded already, regardless if people show up?
We've got two formulas, one based on an average, already accounted for attendance, and the other idea of, seats in the, butts in the seats. So, yeah, we want it to follow the kids. Okay, you guys.
Everybody give Barbara a big hand. I think she did Great job.
Thank you.
I think we learned a lot tonight. Barbara did an excellent job, and again, thank you very much for coming. And like I say, that this last question, everything just goes to show, you know, we need to support this Tom and Carolyn's effort on the 27th. So I'm sure they're willing to get that bus loaded up and as soon as we can, and I know that they can even get another bus if necessary. So the key thing here is showing the support. And it's like Barbara's saying, you know, we have to take action. What it is, and everything that I've heard tonight basically was they're trying to do what they can, but of course we have to take action too, and support our legislators. You know, get good people in there, work hard. It's us that'll make the change. Okay, and so with that, I'd like to thank everybody. Next week, just a special. You know, we're going to have a little different venue next week. We're going to have Dave and Debbie are going to teach us a little bit about urban homesteading, and what that is you know, we need to, in the time of crisis, things that we're going through right now, we ought to be a little bit more self-sufficient, you know, self-reliant, you know, how we can take care of ourselves and community and all that. And we're going to start trying to work a lot of these things into our meetings and stuff, so that how we can become reliant on ourselves and our community and help build our community up. So that's some things that are going to happen over the next week. So I would encourage us all to come next week. And again, for another pitch for a Liberty dinner tomorrow. If you can feel like coming, let us know, and we'd really appreciate it. But with that, thanks again, everybody, for coming. And Barbara, thank you very, very much.
And go to Tim Barton. It will be worth your time.
Yes, go to Tim Barton, you know, and bring everybody. We can fit 1,000 people in this whole building with all the walls down, and that's what we want to try to do. Okay, thank you.